Just after 1 a.m., a local resident was driving home from a late shift at a nearby lumber yard when he noticed a car oddly parked on the side of FM 83. The car's headlights were still on, and the front door was ajar. What he saw next shocked him beyond belief, something he had never seen in his life. It prompted him to immediately call 911. The dispatch log recorded the call at 1:14 a.m. "There's a woman. She's not moving. There's blood. I think she was shot. The car is just sitting there. The door is open. There's no one else." Dear viewers, in the next video releases, you will find very intriguing and confusing cases. And in order not to miss them, be sure to subscribe to the channel and please like the video. Livy Lewis was born in 1999 in Sabine County, Texas, and was raised in the small rural town of Hemphill. She was part of a tight-knit family with deep generational roots in East Texas. Her mother, Darcy Bass, and grandmother Janice Lewis were central figures in her life. They helped nurture Livy into a soft-spoken, intelligent, and deeply empathetic young woman. Livy was striking. Long brunette hair, sharp hazel eyes, a smile that stayed with you. There was gentleness in her voice, a readiness to listen, and a sense of responsibility that felt beyond her years. Even from a young age, Livy exhibited qualities that stood out. She was kind, thoughtful, emotionally mature, and fiercely loyal to those she loved. Her family and friends would often describe her as wise beyond her years, with a gentleness and sense of calm that drew people to her. She didn't seek attention. She offered comfort. Livy's values were shaped by a rural upbringing grounded in faith, family, and community. She grew up with a deep appreciation for life's simple moments and had a quiet determination to make something meaningful of her future. Livy's family wasn't wealthy, but what they lacked in material things, they made up for in emotional warmth. Her grandmother Janice, who'd once worked as a midwife, became her role model. Livy often told friends she wanted to do something that mattered. That desire eventually crystallized into a dream, becoming a pediatric nurse. She often volunteered at her church's daycare and spent weekends babysitting for local families, not because she needed the money, but because she genuinely loved being around children. Her sense of purpose came not from ambition, but from compassion. Livy attended Hemphill High School, where she was an honor student, cheerleader, and member of the student council. Her favorite subject was biology. She spoke often about her fascination with the human body, not just how it worked, but how it could be healed. She once wrote in an essay for class, "Healing isn't just about medicine, it's about presence. People heal faster when they feel seen." After graduating from Hemphill High School, Livy pursued a career in healthcare, a field that perfectly suited her nurturing personality. She became a certified nursing assistant, CNA, and worked diligently while enrolling in college courses to advance her studies. Her goal was to become a neonatal nurse, a specialty that reflects the profound tenderness she had for children and vulnerable populations. As a CNA, Livy's work was physically demanding and emotionally taxing, yet she approached it with grace and commitment. Patients and co-workers alike remembered her as gentle, attentive, and compassionate. She often stayed late to ensure her patients were comfortable, and she had a natural instinct for knowing when someone needed more than just clinical care. They needed to feel cared for. Livy had a special fondness for babies and young children, which made her dream of working in neonatal care all the more fitting. Her future was full of promise. She had the heart, intelligence, and discipline to achieve anything she set her mind to. Like many young people, Livy experienced the challenges of romantic relationships in early adulthood. She began dating Matthew Edgar, a rugged, somewhat brooding figure from the same rural corner of Sabine County. He worked as a welder, tall, strong, respected by some and silently feared by others. Matthew Edgar was 5 years older than Livy and, according to those familiar with their relationship, had a tendency toward control. He and Livy had first met in the summer of 2019 at a bonfire party hosted by mutual friends. To her family, Matthew was polite. He held doors open, showed up with flowers, and fixed her grandmother's porch light without being asked. At first, it seemed like a wholesome love story, a protective older boyfriend supporting a dedicated young woman chasing her dreams. But those closest to Livy began to notice changes. She stopped posting photos on social media as frequently, especially ones that included her friends or family. Her smile, once effortless, became more guarded. What may have started as intense interest gradually evolved into obsessive behavior. His texts, at times pleading, other times manipulative, revealed a volatile emotional undertow. Those close to Livy felt she was withdrawing, perhaps out of fear or emotional exhaustion. And when the two finally broke up, the decision seemed to bring a brief moment of relief. October 31st, 2020, began as an ordinary Saturday in Hemphill, Texas. Halloween in this rural part of East Texas didn't bring large crowds or elaborate parties. It was more about family time, church events, and quiet gatherings. In the hours before midnight, Livy Lewis left for her final shift as a nursing assistant. Her mother, Darcy, waved goodbye as Livy climbed into her white Dodge Charger. For Livy Lewis, who had been working hard as a certified nursing assistant and juggling school, it was supposed to be an uneventful night. After her shift, Livy returned home, exhausted but buoyed by the satisfaction of finishing a difficult clinical rotation. Around 8 p.m., she got a message. Edgar wanted to see her, just for a few minutes. He said he wanted closure. He said he wouldn't argue. He just wanted to say goodbye. Livy hesitated, texting a friend to say she wasn't sure about going. But minutes later, she replied to Edgar with a short, "Okay." They agreed to meet at the dead-end stretch of FM 83, where cell service was spotty and only headlights announced passage. It was a place they had driven to before, remote, wooded, and far from watchful eyes. Moments after midnight, Livy rounded the bend in her Charger. Matthew emerged from the shadows, an ominous figure in the glow. He greeted her quietly. She climbed out to meet him. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket. She took it, unfolding it, smiling sadly. Sometime around midnight, Livy and Matthew were seen together driving along a rural road just outside of town. The stretch they traveled, desolate, wooded, and poorly lit, was the kind of place people passed through, not stopped. But on this night, that road would become the epicenter of tragedy. By the morning of November 1st, the entire town of Hemphill would be changed. A young woman with a life ahead of her, with dreams yet to be lived, would be gone. What happened next unfolded in mere seconds. Just after 1 a.m., a local resident was driving home from a late shift at a nearby lumberyard when he noticed a car oddly parked on the side of FM 83. The car's headlights were still on and the front door was ajar. What he saw next shocked him beyond belief, something he had never seen in his life. It prompted him to immediately call 911. The dispatch log recorded the call at 1:14 a.m. "There's a woman. She's not moving. There's blood. I think she was shot. The car is just sitting there. The door is open. There's no one else." Within minutes, Sabine County deputies and EMS were en route. Paramedics were the first to reach her, finding Livy in the passenger seat, seatbelt still on, body slumped slightly forward. A single gunshot wound was visible on the left side of her neck. There were no signs of life. Time of death was estimated around 12:58 a.m., barely 15 minutes before she was found. Deputies immediately secured the scene. The Charger was towed to a forensic lot under heavy guard. The victim's identity was confirmed quickly. Her student ID badge was clipped to the dashboard, and her phone was still in her purse. But what puzzled investigators was the unusual calmness of the scene. It was too orderly, too quiet. A single spent rifle casing was found on the ground just outside the driver's door. Nearby, impressions in the dew hinted at someone pacing. A flashlight search uncovered footprints leading into the woods, but no one was found. No weapon, no sign of whoever had pulled the trigger. Inside the car, there were few signs of a struggle. No shattered glass, no broken fingernails, no footprints suggesting a struggle outside the vehicle. There were no tire tracks indicating another vehicle had arrived or left. No signs of forced entry. No robbery. Livy still had her necklace. What they did find was chilling. A bloody fingerprint on the passenger door handle. Inside the car's rear compartment were boot scuff marks, suggesting someone may have entered or exited from the back. The angle of the wound and lack of struggle pointed to a scenario where she knew and trusted her killer. Her purse wasn't dumped. Her phone wasn't stolen. This wasn't random. This was personal. Within 24 hours, word spread that Livy had been with someone that night. Someone who hadn't called 911, hadn't come forward, and hadn't been seen since shortly after midnight. Just yards away, officers discovered Matthew Edgar, lying in the grass, curled into a fetal position. He was conscious, but unresponsive, covered in blood, dazed, and appeared disoriented. A rifle lay nearby. He had an injury to his head, later confirmed to be non-life-threatening, and a cut across his hand. Matthew would later claim to have no memory of the events of that night. He told investigators he had blacked out. He couldn't recall how they got there, how the rifle discharged, or what happened in the moments before Livy's death. Authorities took him into custody for questioning, not yet officially charging him, but suspicion immediately turned towards him. Blood tests later revealed alcohol in his system, though nothing that would justify full amnesia. To the public, it was a horrifying shock. To her family, a waking nightmare. Darcy Bass received the call in the early hours of the morning, the kind no mother ever wants to hear. Her daughter was gone. Just 19 years old, shot and killed on a cold roadside in the middle of the night. There was no preparing for the suddenness of it. No warning, no goodbye. Within hours of the shooting on FM 83, the Sabine County Sheriff's Office assembled a task force led by Detective Lisa Mendoza, a seasoned investigator renowned for her attention to detail. Within 48 hours, law enforcement confirmed that Matthew Edgar was a person of interest. He had been taken to the hospital under guard, treated for his injuries, and then held for questioning. Edgar's behavior during questioning raised immediate suspicions. He offered inconsistent explanations, claiming at various times that Livy had fallen, that the gun had gone off by accident, and later that he couldn't remember what happened at all. His story shifted, sometimes mid-sentence. He referred to Livy in the past tense. He asked repeatedly if he was going to jail forever. He was tested for gunshot residue. The results were positive. Back at the scene, investigators pieced together the physical evidence. There were no skid marks, suggesting Livy hadn't tried to flee. Her posture, relaxed, with hands near her lap, indicated that she might not have expected the shot. Forensic analysts believed she was seated in the car when she was shot from close range, possibly from outside the driver's side. The lack of struggle or defensive wounds pointed to a sudden, unexpected attack. It wasn't just a murder, it was an execution. What puzzled detectives was the apparent absence of clear motive, at least initially. Livy had no known enemies. There was no sign of robbery. Her phone, bag, and identification were all present. No sexual assault was indicated in the initial coroner's report. But there was one critical detail. She had spent part of the night before with Matthew Edgar. They had been seen together at a Halloween gathering with mutual friends. Eyewitnesses said the two seemed to be arguing at one point. One partygoer recalled seeing Livy storm out and Edgar follow close behind. Investigators began tracking the timeline of her final hours. Around midnight, Livy and Edgar left the party together. Friends later told police that Livy had seemed hesitant, conflicted about leaving with him, but also worried about making a scene. Edgar's behavior was described as possessive, his mood shifting from affectionate to angry within moments. This wasn't the first time. In the weeks leading up to Halloween, Livy had confided in a close friend that she was starting to feel trapped in the relationship. She said she was trying to end things, but that it was complicated. She hadn't shared much more than that, just enough for her friends to worry. After leaving the party, the couple drove off into the darkness. What happened next remains a matter of partial reconstruction and educated theory. Sometime between 2 and 4 a.m., authorities believe a violent argument broke out in the car. Whether the vehicle was parked at the time of the attack. As investigators gathered evidence, they began to suspect that the murder was not a crime of passion, but premeditated. Friends came forward with texts from Matthew in the days leading up to Livy's death. In one message, he told a friend, "I can't let her go. If she's with someone else, it's over for me." In another, just 2 nights before the meeting, he wrote cryptically, "If it ends my way." Autopsy results confirmed what the officers already suspected. The shot had been fired at extremely close range, consistent with the type of rifle recovered near Edgar. Even more unsettling, investigators found no evidence that Matthew had brought his phone to the scene. They believe he turned it off and left it at home, possibly to avoid GPS tracking. This level of calculation chilled everyone involved in the case. In the weeks that followed, forensic teams reconstructed the final minutes of Livy's life using data from her phone, GPS records. Her text history ended abruptly around 12:45 a.m., just moments before the shooting. The last message, sent to a friend, simply read, "I'm okay. Just finishing up now." Investigators believe she sent that message while sitting in the car with Edgar, unaware of what was to come. Digital forensics recovered fragments of deleted messages. In one unsent note she had typed, "I can't keep doing this. I'm sorry. Please let me go." That message was time-stamped 12:54 a.m., 4 minutes before she was shot. Security footage from a local gas station showed the couple purchasing drinks just hours before Livy was killed. He appeared calm. She looked tense. Eyewitnesses reported seeing them together, and a video captured them in the vehicle, with Edgar sitting in the driver's seat and Livy beside him. This would later become critical to prosecutors trying to establish a timeline of events and location. What happened after Livy's death painted a chilling picture of Matthew Edgar. Authorities believe he remained at the scene for several minutes, standing outside the car, staring at her body. Tire impressions suggested he had parked nearby but fled on foot. Whether it was panic, calculation, or both, he disappeared into the woods without a trace. They had driven together in her car to the edge of the highway, just far enough from town that no one could hear. Law enforcement would later uncover even darker truths. After Livy's death, detectives obtained a search warrant for Edgar's phone and social media accounts. What they found was chilling. Hundreds of messages, many angry and erratic, others disturbingly obsessive. In one, he told her, "If I can't have you, no one will." In another, "You don't know what I'm capable of." They weren't just idle threats, they were warnings, cries of a man spiraling out of control. Livy's death sent shockwaves through East Texas. In a region where violent crime was rare, the murder of a nursing student, a hometown girl with a bright future, struck a chord. Memorials sprang up overnight. Her classmates lit candles at a vigil on campus. Her church held a service that Sunday. Hundreds showed up, many wearing lavender ribbons, Livy's favorite color. The forensic evidence was building. The blood on Edgar's clothes matched Livy's DNA. The weapon found near him was traced back to a friend of his, one who had reportedly let Edgar borrow it weeks earlier for target practice. The trajectory of the bullet aligned with Edgar's position. The bruising on Livy's arms matched fingerprints consistent with his grip. It wasn't one thing that tied him to the murder. It was everything. 1,000 small pieces coming together to form a picture of a relationship that had turned deadly. Edgar's family home was searched under warrant, and investigators seized multiple firearms, electronics, and clothing items. A neighbor reported seeing Edgar in the early hours of Halloween morning, walking alone down a back road. His clothes were muddy, and he looked dazed. That was the last confirmed sighting. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Edgar was not formally charged with murder for several weeks. In that time, he remained free. He returned to his home, attended local events, even showed up at Livy's memorial service. Friends and family whispered in disbelief, struggling to reconcile the sight of him mourning publicly. And yet, even with all the evidence pointing directly to Edgar, the legal process moved slowly. COVID-19 had delayed the court systems. Grand juries met infrequently. Edgar was initially released on a bond of $50,000, an amount shockingly low for someone linked to a homicide. Darcy Bass was outraged. "He killed my daughter, and he's walking free," she told reporters. "How is that justice?" Prosecutors argued for a higher bond, but the judge, citing a lack of formal charges at the time, kept the original terms. The Lewis family began to fear what many dared not say aloud, that Livy's killer might never be held accountable. While Edgar waited for the indictment, he returned to his grandparents' house, stayed off social media, and refused to talk to reporters. After more than a year of delays, Matthew Edgar's murder trial was finally scheduled for late January 2022. The case would be tried in San Augustine County, due to concerns about local bias in Sabine County. The prosecution prepared a straightforward narrative. Edgar, enraged and controlling, shot Livy during an argument in his truck and left her body on the side of a rural road. The evidence was physical, circumstantial, and damning. But just as the trial was set to begin, on February 1st, 2022, something unthinkable happened. Edgar didn't show up. He had vanished. The courtroom erupted in confusion. Family members of Livy Lewis were stunned. Prosecutors scrambled to notify law enforcement. The presiding judge issued an immediate bench warrant for Edgar's arrest, and local deputies were dispatched to his last known address, his grandparents' home near Hemphill. They found nothing but an empty room. Edgar had vanished. His ankle monitor, intended to track his location as a condition of his bail, had gone dead. Authorities believed he had cut it off and fled. Incredibly, the trial continued in his absence. Under Texas law, a defendant who willfully absconds can be tried in absentia. And so, for the next 5 days, the courtroom proceeded as if Edgar were seated right there in the defense chair, even though it sat empty. Jurors heard testimony from friends, forensic experts, law enforcement, and Livy's mother. The prosecution detailed how Edgar had threatened Livy, how his behavior had become increasingly erratic, and how his story didn't match the physical evidence. They showed texts, played voicemails, and introduced autopsy results. Despite a murder charge, despite the graphic forensic evidence, and despite his prior violent behavior, Edgar's bond had not been revoked. Prosecutors had warned the judge that Edgar posed a danger. But the court allowed him to remain free, provided he appeared each day for the proceedings. The manhunt began immediately. A BOLO, be on the lookout alert, was issued. Search parties and drones scoured wooded areas. Law enforcement agencies from across Texas, including the Texas Rangers, the U.S. Marshal Service, and local sheriff's departments, launched a coordinated effort to track Edgar down. They searched nearby towns, combed through cell tower pings, and followed tips about possible sightings. For weeks, helicopters buzzed over forested properties. Dogs tracked scents through creek beds and abandoned hunting camps. Billboards featuring Edgar's photo loomed over highways, bearing the words, "Wanted for murder." How does a convicted murderer disappear in a place where everyone knows everyone? One theory: Edgar had help. In the days following his disappearance, investigators questioned several of Edgar's friends and extended relatives. Some were uncooperative. Others claimed ignorance. But it was clear from the beginning that Edgar had planned his escape. He had likely been preparing for weeks, if not longer. He knew where the patrols would look first. He knew the terrain. He even seemed to know when to move and when to vanish again, always staying just ahead of those tracking him. As local media buzzed with suspicion, pressure mounted. Families and community members wanted answers, and fast. The Sabine County Sheriff's Office held a press conference 3 days after the murder, stating, "We have strong evidence linking Mr. Edgar to the scene," Sheriff Maddox said. "He is considered armed and dangerous. We call upon the public to aid us." The announcement escalated the manhunt. Tip lines flared. Videos from gas stations and highways in neighboring Louisiana were checked. Border surveillance equipment was tapped. The case became not just a homicide investigation, but a top priority manhunt. Billboards went up across East Texas offering rewards. $10,000, then $15,000 for any information leading to Edgar's arrest. By summer 2022, the FBI joined the case. U.S. Marshals added Edgar to their 15 most wanted in Texas list, highlighting him as armed and dangerous. Tips now stretched across state lines. One reported sighting came from as far away as Louisiana, another from Oklahoma. But Edgar remained one step ahead. In October 2022, a break came. But it wasn't what anyone expected. Border Patrol agents in southern Texas reported a vehicle abandoned near a private ranch not far from the Rio Grande. Inside, they found clothes, maps, and a phone registered to a distant cousin of Edgar's. Surveillance footage from a nearby store appeared to show a man matching Edgar's description buying supplies days earlier. The implication was clear. He may have been trying to cross into Mexico. That revelation added a new international dimension to the case. U.S. Marshals coordinated with Mexican authorities to monitor known cartel-controlled crossings, but no further sightings emerged. Some believed he had made it across. Others believed he died trying. The FBI issued an Interpol Red Notice, essentially a global arrest alert, in early 2023, placing Edgar on international watch lists. Posters were distributed across border regions in both English and Spanish. Tips came from Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and even as far as Costa Rica. But again, nothing verifiable, just shadows and echoes. On May 29, 2023, a ranch worker in southern Arizona contacted authorities after spotting a man sleeping near an irrigation canal. The man had a beard, was malnourished, and had a homemade tattoo reading LL under his collarbone, Livy's initials. He initially gave a false name, but later confessed under pressure. Matthew Edgar had been captured. His arrest made national news. He was returned to Texas under heavy guard, no longer a missing man, but an infamous fugitive. This time, there would be no bail. He was remanded directly to the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Matthew Edgar was convicted of murder in the shooting death of Livy Lewis and sentenced to 99 years in prison in the Caulfield Unit, a maximum security prison in East Texas. For Livy's family, it wasn't closure, but it was a measure of justice.